Recording in progress.
Hello, everybody. Today I'm going to talk about the Greek alphabet and its use in magic and divination. The use of alphabets in magic and divination is common in many cultures. The art of writing would in itself have been seen as magical, particularly in an age before literacy was widespread. There are several ways of working with the Greek alphabet, such as isopsophy or Pythagorean numerology, the correspondences of the letters to astrological bodies, such as the seven vowels correspondence to the planets, and the consonants to astrological signs and elements. And then there's Notoricon, which is looking at the initial letters of words and developing oracles depending on the words that the letters stand for. The earliest forms of writing were pictographic, characters representing ideograms or pictograms representing ideas or objects. The earliest Greek writing is from Mycenae and Crete, Linear A and Linear B, 1400 to 1200 BCE. Linear B had 88 different phonetic signs, which was rather cumbersome. It was deciphered in 1953 by Ventris and Chadwick, and here we have an example of Linear B here. The syllabic alphabet likely developed in Phoenicia in 1400 BCE. There was a 32-letter alphabet from Ugarit and a later 22-letter North Semitic alphabet, which is likely to have spread to Greece and many other lands through sea trade. And it was likely the original source of all Western scripts used today, including Norse runes, as well as some Eastern scripts such as Tibetan and Sanskrit. Herodotus tells us that the Greeks were taught these letters by the Phoenicians and adopted them with a few alterations for their own use, continuing to refer to them as Phoenician things, Phoenicia, as was only right, as the Phoenicians had introduced them. And here we see the evolution of the alphabet from Proto-Canaanite to early Phoenician to Greek, and you can see the similarities of the letters and how they've evolved to the Greek letters, which was also the root of the Roman alphabet, the Latin alphabet. Another story of the origins of the alphabet, the mythological story, is that the Greek god Hermes invented the alphabet, basing the letters shapes on the flight of cranes. Hermes' Egyptian counterpart was Thoth, and he was also responsible for writing. He was the god of writing, the scribe god. The Phoenicians gave each letter name a word beginning with that sound, possibly as a mnemonic aid. For example, Aleph means ox, Beth means house, Gimel means camel. In Greek, these words had no meaning, however, so the names of the letters were altered to alpha, beta, gamma, etc. The Greeks also added the vowels as a new innovation. As early as the 8th century BCE, ancient Greeks developed a numerical system that used the letters as numbers. The earliest surviving example of letters as numerals is from vase graffiti from the 6th century BCE. Initially, two types of numeration, Herodian or acrophonic, and Ionian or alphabetic, were used. Herodian uses the iota letter repeated for numbers 1 to 4, then P for 5, and delta for 10, a bit like later Roman numerals. The Ionian system uses every letter in the Greek alphabet to represent a number. This system came into general use during the time of Alexander, and it continued into use during the Byzantine and later periods. It's actually much older than Alexander, but it became into general use during his time. And this, on this slide, is depicted the Ionian system. And this system may be the root of Hebrew gematria. Three archaic letters, digamma, also called vowel, copper, and sampi, which were no longer used in writing, continued to be used as numerals. So there were 27 letters in all, representing 1 to 9, the units 1 to 9, the tens 10 to 90, and hundreds 100 to 900. This gave every word numerical significance, as letters could be added to produce a single number. The Greeks called this isopsephos. Iso means equal, psephos means pebble, as pebbles were used for counting and learning arithmetic. Isopsephy was used by magicians and in the interpretation of dreams in the Hellenistic period. Tradition also held that Pythagoras had used isopsephy for divination. Pythagoras, who lived between 580 and 500 BCE, used numbers in philosophy and religion and studied the connection between music and numbers. He developed the idea that numbers were key to the mysteries of the cosmos, and he was likely influenced by Orphism. Iamblichus quotes him as saying, "Number is the ruler of forms and ideas and the cause of gods and daemons." Pythagoreans saw the numbers 1 to 10 as the primordial powers, which are the basis of all possible numbers, and expressing dualities of quality, odd and even, one and plurality, male and female, resting and moving, light and dark, square and oblong, etc. The number 1 was identified with the creator and represented masculine and strength. 2 was the feminine and receptive. 3 was the number of the whole, beginning, middle, and end. 4 portrays righteousness and stability. 5, marriage as a combination of odd and even. 6, wholeness, peace, and sacrifice. 7, joy, love, and opportunity. 8, steadfastness and balance. 9, completion. The number 10 was especially sacred, and the decad was represented as the tetrakis or tetrad, which is this diagram with the series of dots or spheres. And the study of the mystical properties of numbers was known as arithmology, and this deals with the attributes and magical powers of the numbers. Numbers were identified with various objects, gods and goddesses, planets, Earth, Sun, Moon, the 5 other known planets, the sphere of the fixed stars, and the concept of the counter-Earth, which was said to revolve on the far side of the fire at the centre of the universe, thus making the sacred number 10. And this was likely the source of the tree of life in Hebrew Kabbalah. And here we have a modern kind of reconstruction of the tetrad or tetrakis, relating the different spheres on it to astrological signs and planets, and giving the paths numbers. This is a modern example. It's not actually something that's been found in Pythagorean writings, but it is a modern attempt at reconstruction. But we can see how the tetrad could relate to the Kabbalistic tree of life and how the Kabbalistic tree of life may have been derived from it. A list of correspondences to numbers can be found in the 4th century CE work, The Theology of Arithmetic, attributed to Iamblichus. Seven vowels were used in the Greek alphabet, which relate to the 7 planets. Aristotle, 384 to 322 BCE, discusses the various correspondences of vowels and relates them to the 7 strings on a lyre, the 7 planets, the 7 Pleiades, the 7 heroes who attacked Thebes, etc. The interval from alpha to omega is equal to the interval between the highest and lowest note of a flute, whose number is equal to that of the whole system of the universe and the number of letters in the alphabet, 24. The orbits of the planets create the music of the spheres, according to Pythagoras, and the 7 notes of the major scales by Plato in the myth of Ur. The 7 vowels correspond to the musical scale. Magical invocations from Alexandria contain statements such as, "In your 7-lettered name is established the harmony of the 7 sounds." Rituals in the Greek magical papyri include the intonation of strings of vowels, the 7 directions, the 4 cardinal points, above, below, and centre. This gives additional possible divinatory meanings of the vowels. Planets were also assigned to the 24 hours of the day, which gives us the planetary hours and determines the order of the days of the week. Each day is named after the planet whose hour it begins with. The Greek words for the 5 elements, air, water, fire, earth, and ether, used only 5 consonants altogether: P, delta, rho, gamma, and theta. These consonants were equated to the 5 elements and Aristotelian attributes, as can be seen on this table. Gamma equals earth, which is cold and dry, relates to the god Hades and the Platonic solid of the cube. Delta is water, cold and wet, chronos, icosahedron, etc. A connection was also made between the stars and constellations and the letters. Valens, writing in the 2nd century CE, said that Hellenistic astrologers attributed all 24 letters of the alphabet to the 12 zodiacal signs in pairs. This was the basis for onomantic astrology, which included several different techniques. A pseudo-zodiacal chart could be produced using the zodiacal attributes of the letters of a person's name. There were various methods of corresponding the letters to the signs, some also taking into account elemental and planetary attributes, as well as whether letters were voiced, semi-voiced, or voiceless, the shapes of the letters, numerical value, or due to them being the initial letter of a word. Some letters were identical to earlier linear A and B pictograms, and it's possible that the earliest North Semitic alphabet drew upon Minoan and Mycenaean scripts. Letters had significance from the earliest times as planets, numbers, deities, etc. The letter alpha, from the original aleph, meaning ox in Phoenician, was the first letter because the ox was the first necessity. The Greek historian Hesiod, the Greek writer Hesiod, advised early Greek farmers first get an ox, then a wife. Alpha, as the first necessity, became associated with the first of the planets, the moon, but also the sun as the monad and source of all things. Alpha is the first letter of the name of Apollon, who is associated with the sun. Plutarch, who lived between 45 and 124 CE, said that Apollon means unity, a combination of pollon, meaning many, and a, meaning not or negative, meaning that Apollon is not many, rather that he is a unity. The letter epsilon represented the 3-way crossroads, and therefore was associated with the goddess Hecate, goddess of the crossroads. Delta, which is represented by a triangle, represents the tetrad and a symbol for the number 10 in the Herodian system. Delta was also a symbol of female genitalia. Nicomedes of Gerasa, quoted by Iamblichus, said that the letter epsilon is representative of the scales of justice and therefore means justice, which fits well with a Pythagorean interpretation of the number 5, meaning justice. The letter theta in its archaic form was a cross within a circle, which according to Porphyry was a symbol of the soul. It is also the first letter of the word theoi, meaning gods. It has the value 9, and 9 is the number of the great Ennead of gods in Heliopolis, Egypt. In classical Athens, theta was the letter of death, as the first letter of the name of the god of death, Thanatos. Plato discusses the meanings of certain letters, such as the key, which represents the gates of heaven, where the Milky Way and the path of the planets cross. And he discusses the letter epsilon, the first letter of Hestia's name, meaning essence, showing that Hestia is the essence of all things. Oracular interpretations of the letters have also been found in ancient inscriptions. The one shown on this slide is one such Greek alphabet oracle from an inscription in Olympus, a city in Lycia. In this inscription, each letter of the alphabet has a corresponding oracle, and the first word of the oracle in Greek begins with that letter. So, for example, for Alpha, we have Apollon. The god Apollon says that you'll do everything successfully. For Beta, we have Boethos, meaning assistant. With the help of TK, you'll have an assistant, the Pythian Apollo. For Gamma, we have Gaia, the earth. Gaia will give you the ripe fruit of your labours. For Delta, we have Dunamis, strength. In customs, opportune, strength is weak. For Epsilon, we have Ereo, you desire to see the offspring of righteous marriage. And for Zeta, we have Zale, flee the great storm, Zale, lest you be disabled in some way, etc. And there have been a couple of different such oracles found which use this. This is called Notoricon, where the oracle is derived from the letter by using a word that begins with the letter. The meanings of the letters can also be derived by examining words which begin with each letter in Greek, and looking at the similarities in meaning between different words which begin with the same letter. So looking at what words beginning with each letter have in common. And this is the method used by Catherine Propp in her book, The Greek Alphabet, Unlock the Secrets. The meanings of the letters, including the archaic letters, according to this system, according to Catherine Propp anyway, are as follows on this slide here. So alpha means arising above, beta is a basis, gamma is generative, and from that we get words like generation and genesis, etc. Delta is directed trajectory, epsilon is essence, etc. And she also uses the archaic letters, wow or digama, copper, and parakismima or sampi. There are various methods of divining with the Greek alphabet. One could look at natural oracles, such as the flight of birds, the shapes that cranes' wings make when they're flying, as is the myth of the origin of the alphabet. We could look at what letters are appearing in the sky, so it can be combined with augury and other methods. Or dice were used with the letters on, or astragali, which were knuckle bones, animal knuckle bones, which could have been inscribed with the letters, or the numerical value of the different sides was used. And of course, the numerical value also corresponds to the letter. The set of dice here is a set of dice that I've made for my own use. And with this method, each die has a letter of the alphabet on one side. There's a set of 5 die, and there's also some additional symbols added to the die so that all the sides of all dice are have something on apart from one which is blank. So there's one blank side, and there's a pentagram, and there's the tetrad or tetrachis on one die as well. Stones or pottery shards can also be used. So this is again is another set of divination tools that I've made. Greek alphabet oracle stones. So these are flat, round stones that I found on beaches in Greece and other Mediterranean countries. And on one side, I've painted the letter, and on the other side, I've painted a symbol using the method of Notoricon, something that begins with that letter, but also trying to include the meanings of the letters according to Pythagorean numerology, where I can and where I can make them fit. So there's different ways that you can use these stones and the dice. You could just pick one out, you could cast them, you could see what kind of words they make up. With the stones, you could cast the whole lot, you could pick out one or two. You can use them in a similar way to the runes. With the dice, I would generally suggest picking one die out without looking, and then throwing that die to see which letter emerges, or you could just cast all 5 of them to see what comes up. And you could cast them several times in order to create a narrative. And you could cast all 5 dice 2 or 3 times to develop that narrative further in response to a more complex problem. The dice or the stones may be cast on a cloth with a design on them, such as a pentagram, with each area of the cloth relating to a different area of life. I use a cloth with a pentagram with each point relating to a different element and the associations of that element. For example, earth relating to body, air to mind, water to emotional concerns, etc. So the Greek alphabet is something that can be experimented with, and there's various ways of working with it. You could use the numerology, notocheiron, planetary attributes, etc. There's a number of books that have appeared in recent years. The oldest one is by Kieran Barry, The Greek Kabbalah, which is a very comprehensive book. It was produced in 1999, so not so recent, been around for a while. But there's a couple of more recent books that have come out, such as John Opsopaus, The Oracles of Apollon, The Practical Greek, Ancient Greek Divination for Today. There's Catherine Prop's book that I mentioned earlier, looking at what the letters mean according to different words that begin with those letters. And there's various websites which are exploring the relationship between the Greek alphabet and numerology, Pythagorean numerology and the Kabbalah, such as an article towards a Greek Kabbalah, Letters of the Paths of the Tetractys, on Digital Ambler. There's lots of other information on the internet, and there's plenty to explore for those who want to explore it further. Thanks for watching.